Karen Jackson and Michelle Munger of Faith Inclusion Network. Just a few quick notes as we begin today. In the midst of the pandemic, Shelley and I created Everyone's Welcome to bring together people for conversations around disability, mental health, diversity, and inclusion. Our guests stop by to share their experiences and their stories, providing food for thought as we pursue diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging in our faith communities and in society. Everyone's Welcome is a collaborative production of Whole Community Inclusion at Jewish Learning Venture and Inclusion Innovations. Everyone's Welcome is captioned. You can click on the CC icon at the bottom of your Zoom screen and click on View Captions. We're also streaming today on Facebook Live. And we are recording Everyone's Welcome, so you'll receive this link in an email, and we invite you to share it and every episode with people in your life. We invite your questions and your comments. You can use the chat to actually put questions or comments in at any point during our episode.
Great, thanks, Gabby. And I have to apologize, everyone. Today is the day they're putting in our new, or they're taking out our old kitchen floor, and there's a lot of pounding and banging, and I'll be on mute as much as I possibly can. So I am so excited. Gabby and I are really pleased to welcome Karen Jackson and Michelle Munger to Everyone's Welcome today. You are in for a treat. Karen is the founder and the board chairperson of Faith Inclusion Network. And until recently, Karen was the executive director of FIN, as it's more commonly known. During the 10 years when Karen was at the helm, FIN has grown from a local organization in the Norfolk Hampton Roads, Virginia area, providing resources, consultation, and guidance to diverse congregations, and has become a national leader. FIN hosts biannual conferences where many of the national and international leaders in the field of religion, spirituality, and disability speak. And FIN also hosts a biannual retreat for those leaders to share their experiences and their expertise and guide the field to establish priorities and practices that promote inclusion. Michelle Munger is the Interim Executive Director of FIN and has been part of the organization throughout its growth. Both Michelle and Karen are moms of autistic adults and authors of memoirs about their spiritual perspectives raising their children. I want to mention also that until recently, I was a national board advisor to FIN, and I just recently joined the board. And I can attest, having known Karen and Michelle for a long time, how amazing they are. So we are really happy to welcome you both, Karen and Michelle.
And I want to say I have also gotten to know Karen and Michelle recently, and want to second that. And we want to jump right into the FIN story. Karen, can you paint a picture for us? What was the impetus to create a very innovative organization? What purpose did FIN serve?
Thanks, you guys. Thanks so much for the nice welcome and introduction. Well, Faith Inclusion Network really goes back to 2008, and I was just, as you know, a younger mom with 3 young children, trying to figure out how to make our Catholic church work, which it totally wasn't, because my daughter with Samantha, who has autism, could not attend really at all. She just couldn't stay calm enough, couldn't be in the sanctuary. No one understood what was going on, the story that So really it was, it really started back even before 2008, like trying to figure out how am I going to make this work? Because I wanted to go to church. As you know, I had grown up going to church. I wanted my family to go. And then in 2008, I sort of had it, I was like, okay, something has to be done. So what happened is I just went to this new church and I said, can you help me out? Can you help us out? Like, what can we do to make this work for my daughter? And just in that conversation grew out of that was learning how to accommodate my daughter, but then also I began meeting other families around the community who had the same issue. So I was like, great, okay, I'm not alone. There are other people out there that are struggling to find a faith community that's going to work for their child with a disability. And I began investigating, what was going on. What I really found out was there wasn't that much going on back then, not as much as there is now, thank God. And so I started reaching out to my local community. I'd been, here in the area since 1998. So I knew people, and I got some friends who work in schools, who work in different faith communities, people I knew who had children with disabilities, and said, who's in for trying to figure this out as a community? And that was really the birth of Faith Inclusion Network. And right after that, in 2009, we held our first conference, and we had absolutely no idea how to do that, but we did it. Eric Carter was our first guest. So we got him right away. And he, of course, has a great book out about how to include people with disabilities. And in that book was a chapter about starting a faith network, a network for faith communities. And I said, that's it. That's what we're going to do. And that's really how it got started.
So this question is for you, Michelle. What was the situation like for your family's faith community life and that journey? And then how did you get involved with Finn, and what roles have you had?
Yeah, so my family was a military family. So you can imagine that every 3 years having to pick up and move, which for to have two children with disabilities who have IEPs and all of the things that go along with moving around. Besides the educational stuff, you've also got to find a new church community to connect with. And when they were small, we just were not successful. I would continually get we just can't help you here. We don't know how to do that. And I just got to the point where I kind of gave up because I was tired and I needed to be able to focus on just functioning day to day. And when we moved back, so Newport News, Virginia is home for us. It's where, even though I was a military child as well, family is still here. And we were able to get stationed home. And we've been here now since 2006. And it was in the course of, after we got the kids settled educationally, we've got to figure this out. And I don't even remember how it happened, but I stumbled upon I think it was a conference that Finn hosted in Hampton that I signed myself up for. And it was the first time, I had any exposure to Finn at all. And I was like, oh my gosh, where have these people been all of my life? So it was really about, finding the organization and then kind of making sure that I was able to connect, and kind of imposing myself in all of the things. And Karen and I met, and the relationship, I think it's been very interesting how my involvement has evolved, in that when we first started, the area of Hampton Roads is very subdivided. Finn began in the Norfolk, Virginia Beach region, which for me is across the river. It's across tunnels and bridges. And it was very obvious that the people that would come to things on the south side, is what we call it, they don't necessarily come to things that are on the peninsula where I live, and vice versa. If there are people on the peninsula that aren't going to be willing to drive across those tunnels and bridges at rush hour in order to attend functions across the river. So the first idea was to establish a regional a regional person that would kind of be responsible for creating a network that would do things on the peninsula. And that, and we had lots of great ideas, and, but often we struggled finding people to stand up in all of the different regions. And it kind of morphed to, while I was doing things and trying to make connections on the peninsula, I was also helping to do presentations and to represent Finn at, like school functions that would allow us to come in to set up a booth and talk about who we are and what we can do for them. So it kind of morphed from, well, the regional thing really isn't working, as far as citywide. So we're just going to scrap that, and we're going to go to more of an associate director. So I kind of became an associate director to Karen's executive director. And again, we were sharing speaking responsibilities. We would get something that was an opportunity. It's like, all right, can you do this? Can we both do this? Who's going to do this? Because it's important. So we would share, discuss and share those responsibilities. And then just in the natural progression of Karen deciding that maybe she needed to be doing some different things, it was kind of a natural progression for me to step in as interim. I'm not convinced that I'm the right person to stay in that position for many years. So that's why we tagged on the interim part, and we'll see what the future has with that. So.
Really interesting, Michelle. And, I think many of our communities here, I'm in the Philadelphia area, struggle with that geographic thing and trying to find community. And, it's just a struggle. You want something local and not, a drive away. So I think many folks will relate to that. Karen, we're wondering about how Finn has evolved since its beginning, and if you could talk about the factors that have influenced the direction, you've moved the organization.
Sure. Yes. So as Michelle talked a little bit about, it is, we started with this kind of idea that we're going to put people in different cities. And and that was, we got off the ground with that, but we realized pretty quickly that we need to change our focus, and went to the executive director, associate director, and kind of combined forces. And I feel like that's where Michelle and I were able to get, more effective in what we're doing. But if we go back to the very beginning of how the organization and what we do got started and how it developed, we really started with just using local people. At the beginning, we didn't have a budget to bring in guests from around the country. We had to go to our local experts and just use them to help present different, aspects of inclusion. And just come together, just physically be together in the meeting. So we started that way, and then gradually grew. I started attending conferences, different faith and disability conferences around the country, and not a ton of them, because of course, I have had a lot of responsibilities at home too, but enough to start to get to know people. And that's really, it really started to kick in that this is a movement. This is a faith and disability thing. It's not just, here in Hampton Roads or in a certain denomination, but there are springing up around the country different people doing this work in different aspects. And so one of the fun things that came out of it and how Finn has evolved to this point now, which I'll talk about in a second, that we're moving to a more national focus, is that, I didn't know how much I was going to enjoy getting to meet people like Gabby and Shelley and all these people doing this fabulous work, and and how important that was, because we were bringing together people who had that expertise, but we're just able to then now start bringing it to Hampton Roads and bringing it directly to people here in conferences and virtual events and things like that. So the progression has gone from sort of starting locally with a zero budget to now, learning over the course of the years, finding people, bringing people together, and then being able to offer, those valuable educational experiences and networking opportunities that, people are looking for.
And you've done a phenomenal job. And
Thank you.
I think you're welcome. I think the conference this past year, and maybe you'll talk about that in terms of our, we're talking about this year being a year of transition and change. And this is really for both of you. What do you hope to accomplish over the course of this year? And what plans do you have? What do you hope the outcomes are? And what is that going to be?
Do you want me to start, Michelle?
Yes.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I'll get started. So that's a big loaded question, but one that has us really, really excited. So the biggest plans we have right now are this initiative to begin to go from being a regional organization to a national organization. And really that started years ago when we started really doing national leaders retreats here in Virginia Beach, and really connecting and giving opportunities for those leaders to come together right here before our conference. So that those efforts, are really bearing fruit now, because now we have this already established national connection, and we would like to very much intentionally move forward now to reach more people around the country. And there's a couple ways we're doing that. One of the biggest ways is that we have actually set up, I think it's 10, if I'm right, consultants on our Facebook page, recognizing that, yes, if there are people in our area, they're going to go to Michelle or perhaps I to get some guidance in inclusion, get some consulting, maybe have a presentation at their faith community. But we can't reach everyone. We're not boots. We don't have boots on the ground, in California or wherever. So what we are trying to do is establish these consultants who are in different locales around the country, who are also with different denominations, so that the person who is Jewish actually is most likely, we're going to steer towards Shelley, who's our inclusion expert with Jewish congregations. And we have a lot of different people with different backgrounds. So that's an exciting aspect that we are intentionally making a way for people to reach Finn and get our resources and have consultants from around the area. We also are looking to hire different staff and positions. So we're developing our staff. Hopefully we are developing our, volunteer efforts. And then also, instead of the conference, which is something we've done every other year, we're looking to now do our conference every year. And I'm going to let Michelle talk about the conference in a second, but the conference, other than the other events that we do, the conference is sort of the focal point where we're bringing a lot of people in the community together. But we did it virtually last year, and we're going to do it both virtually and in person this year. So I'm going to pass the baton to Michelle so she can talk about what that looks like this year.
Yeah, for me, I think the conference is definitely the thing that is all encompassing, all consuming, rather, my brain. Because last year was or would have been our normal every other year conference. So, and because of obvious reasons, we took it virtual, and it was such a success on so many levels. And, at the end of the first of our main session together, everyone was typing, see you next year. And I'm like, this is an every other year conference, but we didn't correct anybody because we're hoping that we would be able to get back in person. And I think an every year conference is just going to help support the movement of disability inclusion across our faith communities. And the fact that we figured it out last year as far as the virtual component on a shoestring budget was pretty amazing to me, that it actually all flew. And one of the things that I would tell Karen is that if we are flying, we are building this thing as we're flying it, Karen. It's okay. It will be okay. And but it was such a great learning experience, and I think everyone had a great time. And the resources now that we have to make available and that will continue to be available are just so good. So we're moving to have the conference every year. Both virtual and in-person components are leadership. The retreat where we are bringing our national and international leaders in is going to happen this year, hopefully. And it's definitely a higher capacity, right? Instead of going every other year, now we're doing it every year. So it's good stuff. And this year we're also just really laying that foundation for continual growth, with, standing up the regional groups. We're kind of in pilot program mode where we want to do it very slowly, but very methodically, and just so that we're setting everyone up for success in their regions. Bill Gaventa has really been instrumental in supporting the organization as a whole. And I know he's very much a fan of local organizations. So while, and we've seen the power of local organization and empowering other localities to stand up an organization like Finn is pretty exciting to us. So
it's wonderful to hear the trajectory and where you are now. So I'm going to switch gears a little bit to sort of go into that personal perspective. The four of us are all parents of autistic adults. The journey that we've taken and that we continue to take has led us down the road to become groundbreakers and leaders at the intersection of faith and disability. Can you tell us how spirituality has guided this direction in your life? Karen, why don't you go first, and then Michelle?
Sure. Thank you. So all along with Faith Inclusion Network, I knew that this was really an answer to my initial prayer. And that initial prayer was, what more can be done? What can I do? I recognized that I was struggling to figure out how to include my daughter in a faith community. What more could I do to help other people? And every step of the way, my faith and my spirituality have been a big part of this, because I just feel that is such an important component to anyone as a person, but as a parent, you want the best for your children. You're praying, over them. If you're a person of faith, you are looking for the answers and what's right for them, regardless of whether or not they have a disability or not. And so as Finn has developed, it was a natural thing for me anyway to pray over every decision as we're going along. We actually just had a local Finn board retreat, like a few hours together outside in sunny Virginia, and it was really nice. We actually even jumped in the pool at the end, but that's another story. So and what I said to everyone as I'm making this important transition, that I think is really valuable decision for the organization for me to step out of being executive director and move on to the board, as I was, so I'm trying to share my words with them, and it's emotional and it's a big deal, but I said, it's really important that we keep this in mind, that this is an organization that is primarily about faith. We don't have to all agree about how we worship and there's obviously different belief systems and faiths and denominations and all that. But what we all agree on is that people who are affected by disability should be able to worship and be part of a faith community. And so what makes me feel really good in this transition is that everyone feels strongly about that component of Faith Inclusion Network. And I feel that comes from my, beginning of just desiring to help Samantha and help the community. So I don't know if I answered the question really, but that's a little bit about, I feel very passionate about making sure families can connect with faith communities. I think community is so important, and work, as people with, children with adults with autism, and hopefully there are people in the audience who are going to get this. It's hard to find community sometimes, and faith community shouldn't be a struggle. So it's just been all about that all the time, and making sure that we're keeping helping faith communities give that opportunity for people to be connected.
Thank you, Karen. And Michelle, how about for you?
Yeah, so whenever I tell this story, I get all teary-eyed. So when my husband and I were first married, we felt full-time ministry would be in our future. And then when we received diagnoses and, experienced the challenge that we did with connecting to a faith community, I really felt like, well, maybe we misheard. Maybe we misinterpreted, what was needed. And it took quite a few years, and my children were still small. And I just, at one point, I kind of had an experience where it says, no, you still have a job to do. And that job is to help the community figure out disability inclusion. And then it took many more years, though, before I got connected with Finn. But that was really the spiritual piece, and I can remember growing up, having, been a part of faith community all of my life, and being able to look back and say, where were the people with disabilities? And so and we can still look around in our communities and see that they are missing. They definitely don't represent the full percentage that they should. So just knowing that, I've kind of been given a mission by being given the children that I have. So.
Yeah, Michelle, that speaks to me so much. And this idea I talk about a lot in my own story of the before and after awareness of my parenting journey, and how I didn't, I have to be really honest and say, I didn't see things. I didn't think about those questions. I didn't wonder or imagine who was missing and why. And I'm grateful that now I'm able to bring that awareness.
Amen.
It's part of growing up as parents. And I used to get so angry at God. Why my family? Why us? Until I realized that God was probably just as frustrated and, like upset with all the things that were upsetting me about how unfair our son was treated, and the conditions were so horrible. And then it was like, yeah, you know what? I don't have to be angry at God anymore. I can be God's partner. I think that's what the calling is for me. So the whole spirituality piece is different for all of us, but it's certainly, that heart, it literally is the heart of the matter. And now I don't know what they're banging around down in my kitchen, but I want to know. I mean, I'm involved with Finn, and I see Dave Morstead. Hi, Dave, is here. He's involved with Finn and has been for years. How can our audience get involved with Finn?
Go ahead, Michelle. Do you want to start?
Sure. So I think there's a bunch of ideas, quite a few options. And I think the easiest that everyone can do would be to pray, right? And to lift up the organization. We do have, if you would like to be involved in hearing what's going on, we have a newsletter that goes out every month, and we'd love for you to connect with that. And if you're able, we would love for you to connect as members. It is something that the membership, actually, and we didn't talk about this, Karen, we're working on new ways to connect with our membership, maybe to provide a little extra that the general public doesn't receive. So we would invite for you to explore the faithinclusionnetwork.org website and see all that's there. There are resources there. There's links to YouTube videos, as well as information on becoming a member and potentially sponsor of what Finn is doing. Like I said, not only locally, but also coming soon nationally, and maybe even to your neck of the woods if it's something. I see Tom Jones, who is pretty excited about standing up a group in West Texas. So that's super exciting. And but if you're at all interested in what that would look like to stand up a group in your locality, we would love to chat with you on that.
And also share about our Facebook page. So if you're on Facebook and want to keep up with kind of local activities and resources, there, try to post a lot on there and join us. The other thing I was thinking about is, Michelle, is that, with this coming off of the pandemic and having this really great, we not only held the conference virtually, but we held smaller events too, kind of having guests and having a Zoom call and connecting with everyone. And we're hoping to do some of that as well, not just the conference. And we haven't even said we've been talking blah, blah, blah about the conference. And it's actually in March. So March 11th, right? Am I right on that date? Yes.
Mark your calendars now.
Yeah. So yeah, there's of course that way. If you're a social media person, hop on Facebook and join us in conversations. But definitely connect with us. And Michelle is of course taking the helm now and starting those conversations with different people around the country who think, wow, we need to connect with our locality, people who are interested in faith inclusion. And there's definitely ways to do that. And Finn wants to help with that for sure.
Thank you so much. And thank you, David mentioned the YouTube channel as well, and you can find everything on your on the website rather. You can find the YouTube and all the resources that you mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
Karen and Michelle, we just want to really thank you for your time and for being with us today, and for all the people who will be watching this either on Facebook or on YouTube, to know that, visit the website and check out all the amazing resources that Finn has.
Thank you so much.
Shelley, you're muted.
I know. I think some people wish that was happening more frequently. But anyway, you both have written glorious books. Michelle has written Margins of Grace about her journey and her family's journey, and Karen has written Loving Samantha and about the story of her family. And these are very, very insightful and very, I think they lay their stories out there and very relatable, and I think what I love about both the books when I read them, I was feeling I'm not alone in this. And I know I'm not, but it really was an affirmation. Both books were. So I just want to share that as well. And feel free to put things in the chat. We're going to just keep moving along because I want to tell you about our next episode of Everyone's Welcome. I'm so excited. We are going to be welcoming on August 19th my cantor Tamar Havilio. She's dynamic, engaging, entertaining, and she's coming on to talk about spirituality. And especially as our Jewish audience members know, we're preparing for the high holidays of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, and we wanted to invite Cantor Havilio on to share her perspective, her expertise, and I'm certain she's going to be offering some singing or music. And just a little bit about her. She's originally from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And after she completed her undergraduate degree in theater at the University of Iowa, she began cantorial studies at the Hebrew Union College in Jerusalem. And after she completed that program in 1996, she served congregations in New York, New Jersey, and Milwaukee before she pursued a master's program at NYU's Tisch School of the Arts in the Performance Study Division. In 2002, Cantor Havilio returned to Hebrew Union College in Jerusalem as a member of the faculty, where she taught the Reform movement's future Jewish leaders. In 2008, she became head of cantorial studies on the Jerusalem campus. And she's also been active with Women of the Wall movement, where she's known as the cantor of the Kotel. Kotel is Hebrew for the wall, the Western Wall. In 2020, in the midst of a pandemic, as we know, Cantor Havilio, her husband, and 3 sons returned to the U.S. and to the Midwest. And as I said, she's cantor of my synagogue, Bet Shalom congregation in Minneapolis. But we're just so excited for Cantor Havilio to join us for a conversation about spirituality, diversity, music, and inclusion. And that is on Thursday, August 19th. You will be getting a reminder or information via email. And we hope you'll all join us. It'd be great. Gabby.
I'm so excited for that, Shelley. And I'm so glad you shared that slide with Karen and Michelle's beautiful books. And I guess the next slide forward has the books that Shelley and I have written, which you can find wherever you buy books, your independent booksellers, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Kindle, etc. And also, Jewish Learning Venture has created In My Kahila this year. So if you're involved in early childhood education, or your parents or your grandparents, check it out. As we head back to school, it's a great time to introduce our kids to the values we've been talking about today about diversity and inclusion. Raise them up with it. We'll notify everyone who's registered for this webinar about our next episode, which looks so exciting. And also, in the meantime, you can visit us at jkidaccess.org and you can see the whole archive of the conversations that Shelley and I have had over the last, Shelley, gosh, it's like 14 months or so now.
It is.
Right?
14 months. I think we must be starting season 3 by now.
I think we will be in September, Shelley.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And you can connect with Shelley and I in all the places. We love to talk about our journeys, helping your communities with faith and inclusion. And we want to thank you all for taking the time to join us today. We have viewers on Facebook Live as well as here in our webinar. And we invite you to help us spread the word about Everyone's Welcome. Let your friends and colleagues know. We're just grateful for your support. Thank you, everyone. Stay safe and be well.
Thank you, everyone. Michelle, Karen, thank you so much for being here and for all of you for joining us today.